I'm Meghan Parnell.
Dave Barnes.
And we're in the band Bywater Call, and you're listening to Talking Blues.
Okay, so first of all, I want to congratulate you because I think there's some exciting things happening to your careers. And I got a chance to see you in November at the Rivoli, and that was an amazing show.
Thank you.
You were talking about maybe recording an album, and I know recording a live album is never easy. Is there a possibility that some things are going to come out of that show?
I think so. We started tracking live shows in a little bit towards the end of our US run, and then throughout our whole Europe UK run that started in October. Then we got some more, and we came back and did more US dates in like mid-November, and then into December we recorded our Rivoli show. So it won't all be from one performance, but we're just taking the best takes from different shows and putting that into a compilation of live tracks. And I think some of the Rivoli material is going to make it in. Yeah.
I hope so. There's some good stuff from those shows. So,
it's also video from those shows.
That's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of audio to kind
Go
of
through.
sort through.
Yeah.
How does that happen? Do you know after the show, do you think, oh, that was 3 songs are great, so let's just mark it down? Or do you just step away from it and then listen to everything and go?
I mean, it would have been kind of smart to do that, but I think there's two things there. We kind of just did it and then walked away, especially when we're intensively touring, like night after night. I think nobody really wants to, you want to have a drink after the show and not really think about the individual tunes and all that kind of stuff. But also, I think listening back, it sounds different than what you heard. So sometimes you're like, this show was really awesome, and you listen back to it and you're like, oh, it really wasn't that great. Or you think a show wasn't that great, and then you start listening back to the stuff and you're like, actually, there was a lot of really good stuff from that. So I think if we limited ourselves in that way and ignored all the other stuff, we might actually be missing out on some good stuff. So
Yeah.
So has that listening process begun? Or does
Yep.
that...
Yeah. Well, I think we're on the other side of it now. I think we've picked...
we're narrowing it all down.
We're narrowing it down to 20. The thing is the band does jam quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's like, how long is this live? Even if we did 6 songs, is this going to be a 2-hour live? For, you know, not really, but
we'd like to fit it on a single vinyl.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
But I always think of the classic rock bands of the 70s who released those double live albums that made them, or, that defined them.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it was their 4th album. So that's what this would be. Is that the next album, or you think it's something else?
That's the plan.
Yeah.
We've been doing a lot of writing, and the next studio album is definitely on our brain. But this is a good bridge in between, because we want to make sure we get the new tunes right. So instead of rushing through, we've had a lot of people ask us for a live album, so I think it's a good time to be doing it. And yeah, it buys us some extra time to keep writing and come up with some more stuff that we're super proud of.
So like when you do 140 shows a year, or last year, then hopefully you're warmed up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we've been off for a while now, so.
Okay, if we go back to the beginning, I'm going to ask you individually how you came to your musical instrument, your voice and your guitar. So, Dave, let's start with you. Were you always a guitar player? How did that happen?
Yeah, I was in high school and I was listening to a lot of classic rock music, and I think I kind of always wanted to play guitar. My parents were big into music, and what really pushed it, because I kept thinking about it and like I was sort of insecure about it, like, oh, I don't know if I'd be any good. And then I heard David Gilmour, Wish You Were Here, the solo he plays on that, and I was walking to school, and it was a very memorable moment. I was like, that's it, one way or another I'm going to figure this out. And I started playing then and became that high school guy that you knew that always had a guitar with him at all time. That was me. And then after that, came out of high school, went into trades for a while, and then eventually worked my way into getting into Humber for applied music jazz program. After that, started some cover bands, some event bands, which we're still running now. And that's how I met Meg. And we started doing a bunch of event band stuff, which we still do from time to time.
Can you define event bands? I presume that's like corporate gigs.
Corporate gigs, wedding gigs, club gigs, stuff like that. There's definitely a solid proliferation of event bands in Toronto because there's so many great venues and opportunities to play. To the point that I think there needs to be a little bit more love for the original band. Right now, the tribute band is huge, but yeah, that's how Meg and I met. Is we had Humber musicians on vocals in our event band, and it just didn't work out as well. It's really hard. Like, they were good singers, but it wasn't the sound we were looking for. We met Meg. I'm like, this is exactly the sound we're looking for.
Did you know immediately?
Yes. I actually fired the singer that...
On the spot. Get out of here.
They weren't there, but via email or something. I was like, yeah, I think it's not working out. And this is... I don't want to disparage this person because they're lovely and great vocalists, but they weren't that into it either. They were just like, we'll see how this goes, right? Because we hadn't done anything yet. And then we met Meg, and I was like, this is going to be great. And that was it.
So when you heard Dave Gilmour and thought, this is what I want to do, what is it that you wanted to do?
I think it was just like one of those light bulb moments where you just hear something so inspiring, and it just sounded so good. And it's like a simple acoustic guitar solo, but I just was like, I want to be part of this. I want to know how to do this, you know. I'm sure it's the same with anybody who has some kind of a calling. It's just like, oh, this seems like way more fun than everything else I'm doing right now. It was kind of one of those, yeah.
Meghan, how did you come to sing?
I did not go to school for it, but I don't know. I can't remember a time when I didn't feel like that was part of who I was, like a singer, even though it wasn't something I was doing professionally until later on. But, you know, my Nana would march me over to her neighbor's house and make me sing songs.
Can you give me an example? What kind of songs are you singing at that point?
Well, the one I remember the most clearly from a child was Somewhere Over the Rainbow. That was like, I mean, I probably sang that multiple times a day, every day for a good part of my life. Yeah, and I got into choirs. I was doing choirs. I did like little local musicals and stuff like that. So my first love musically, like for me, I was musical theater. So there was a time that I really, really wanted to do that. I went to university in Toronto at U of T for science, for human biology, but I chose U of T specifically because it put me in Toronto. So I was like, okay, I can go get my science degree and I can audition for the musicals in Toronto. And then I didn't pursue that particularly aggressively, so I just never got anywhere with it. And then, I don't know, I ended up getting eventually hooked up with a couple guys who were running cover bands. So that was my first kind of dip into the professional world. And as soon as I started singing in cover bands, I was like, oh, I get to sing all the songs and I don't have to like play a character or memorize, you know, like that was cool. And I, especially like kind of the rockier stuff, like I love pushing my voice like that. So that was a lot of fun. And then I went with one of those cover bands to Morocco, kind of jumped into the deep end because I'd only done a couple months of like weekend gigging, and then all of a sudden I was in Morocco doing 6 nights a week in a smoky bar in Casablanca. So yeah, I learned a lot about it then. It was a lot of fun, and it also became very, very difficult. And then when I got back from there, I had to take some time off because I had lost my voice. And as I was recovering was when I was kind of sitting in with a band, and the guitar player in the band asked me if I had a regular band that I was working with, and I didn't at the time. And it was Dave's best friend who knew that Dave was looking for a singer. So he put us together, and I went to a little jam, and he fired his singer that night, and then we've been working together ever since. Yeah.
When you lost the voice, what was that like for you?
It was horrible. I feel like I'm still. Anytime I had one bad night last year, and you get these kind of flashbacks of like, oh my God, is it happening again?
Did you lose it completely?
I could barely speak when I got back from Morocco. It was pretty crazy. I did. It was a 4-month gig. It was 2 months in Casablanca and then 2 months in a tourist city south of there. And everything was really good for most of the first 2 months. And then I got sick and I was singing on a sick voice 6 nights a week. There was cigar and cigarette smoking in the bar. I didn't really know how to properly take care of myself. It was first time being in an environment like that. So I was like, I was drinking and staying up. We were gigging until 4:00 in the morning, you know? And I just never got an opportunity to get my voice back. I was still singing at least half of the tracks every night. Didn't know what notes were going to come out from one night to the next. It was different. And so by the time I was done, there was just nothing. I could kind of talk in a whisper. So I came back and I saw an ear, nose, and throat, and there was no damage, which was great. So I saw a speech pathologist for a few months who really helped me out.
Okay, so you two meet. At this point, are you thinking more doing event gigs and doing cover stuff, or what's your thinking?
Oh yeah. So the original band wouldn't even become a I kept talking about it with the other members of the cover band, and they all were like, "Yeah, whatever. We're making money. This is a good thing. Let's leave it." Which is something, and not that it's their fault, but it's something I deeply regret. I wish I'd started sooner because we love it so much now, and I don't think we even realized it was so possible. But it would be a good.
The band was running for at least 10 years,
decade,
I think, before
we even really got our feet wet with writing songs, because it just seems so difficult. Like and my heart really does go out to all original bands out there trying, because there really is and we know some really good ones that are, maybe haven't been as fortunate as we have been, even on this small scale, but like, it's just, you're basically going out into the world and saying, here's my original songs, and everyone goes, yeah, that's nice. We're not going to pay you for it. There's no opportunities. Enough to begin with, yeah, it's hard enough. And then, so I think I was too intimidated to get into it. And we were having fun and making money.
And we also got really busy. Like as the cover band grew, it became
it was a full-time
very much
job.
like a full-time job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In some ways still is.
Yeah.
We're part-time, I guess, now.
Yeah.
I mean, you must see it everywhere you go when you play gigs. Probably the night before, there's a cover band or tribute band playing, right? Like it's
and it is defeating, not because those guys shouldn't be doing it, and not because it's a totally understandable way to play music. It's just that you can't help but shake the notion that the bands they're paying tribute to had the courage and maybe the opportunity to make something memorable and classic and original that stood the test of time.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than walking that same path, they walk a mirror image of it and probably some of them spend their entire professional lives just being like, yep, we're dressing up like Kiss tonight and doing a bunch of Kiss songs. And it's like, yeah, but why not write in the style of Kiss, in like some things that.
But it sounds like you didn't do that initially. Like, it wasn't like
that's right.
Exactly.
That is why.
Because it's.
I'm such a hypocrite.
No, but I wonder what made you.
You don't have to go too far from home, and you can make decent money at it if you properly build a company around it.
For sure, and especially now, because I think it's a lot tougher for original bands to get out there and get gigs or get an audience than cover bands. But so, what made you decide we should write our own songs?
Yeah, well, I think it was like a few circumstances. So one, the cover band was making enough money that I felt comfortable enough to leave my day job. Okay. So I was like, I could free up some of my time to start this thing rolling.
So you had this vision or a thing that you want to reach.
Well, at this point, we had started talking a lot, just the two of us, about we've been doing the cover band thing for almost 10 years, and we were losing a little bit of steam for it, like Like, how much longer are we going to be singing somebody else's music? Plus, we were listening to a lot of music that we were finding very inspiring in terms of like a sound that we would want to create for people. Something, you know, that, we thought that we could really enjoy and draw from. So, you know, being able to free up some of my time, being kind of sick of playing covers and being like, if we don't do something else, you know, we're going to lose it. And the music that we were listening to at the time, kind of those things coming together and just being like, okay, let's do it. And I quit my job, and we went out for my birthday one night, and our friend was there, and he had a gig coming up at the Central, which used to be in Mirvish Village. And we were talking, and he was trying to put together a little lineup of bands for the night. And I committed us to a half an hour set before we had even written a song. I was like, this will be a good way for us to make sure we have like a handful of tunes just together, because we had this deadline now.
How far away?
And it helped. I don't know, a couple months. Do you remember? I don't know. I think it was
so.
A couple months.
You probably told me, and I was like, "What? Are you crazy?"
Yeah. But I was like, "This is it's gonna make us do it. It's gonna make us."
It did too.
Yeah.
So, I just interviewed Eddie Schwartz, who's a Nashville songwriter, and he's written tons of hits.
Oh, cool.
I can't imagine how easy it is to write a song. He's written hundreds, but and many hits. But when you say, okay, let's write a song, how easy was that? What happened then?
Yeah, not easy.
It's still not
easy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like all things, I think you find, you start to find ways of not building the entire house in one go, kind of thing. Like if somebody said to you, oh my God, how do you build a house? You're like, well, the contractor would say, well, the first thing you do is you dig a hole and pour a foundation. It's like, well, that seems manageable. So songwriting's a bit like that. It's like, well, what if we had some chords? You know, what does these chords sound like? Okay, cool. We got a small little chord progression. Like, okay, well, what kind of vocal melodies can you kind of hear over those chords? And then Meg will come along and just sort of riff, no words, some kind of a small melody idea. And then we go, oh, we like that. Let's put some words to that. And it's built out like that. I think that's the technique we use. Or sometimes we have an idea, you know, a lyrical idea that'll get us going. And I was like, oh, this would be a cool line. Let's build something around that. Yeah. I think those are the two methods.
And there's a handful of that like Dave has come in with that immediately felt like just off the bat felt really awesome. And those moments are really great, and you just kind of like, cool. And then you go back to the other stuff that you really have to kind of go back and forth with to make it the thing that you kind of envisioned in your head.
I wonder if you feel like you know what the Bywater Call sound is, or, I mean, that's not the right word. But when you start writing, do you remember the first time you wrote a song and you thought, oh, this is who we are, or this is where we want to be? Do you remember feeling that, or are you there?
I don't think so.
I think we're still, whittling it down.
There's moments.
We have a lot of different influences, and the guys in the band have a lot of different influences, which ends up, you know, coloring the stuff that we're writing. I think there's stuff where we're like, yeah, this is exactly what we want. And there's other stuff that's like really great tunes, but we're worried maybe aren't exactly kind of the end vision of the band. I don't know.
Yeah. I just don't know when you just start writing after being in a band for 10 years and say, let's write songs. And then kind of getting over the hurdle, getting rid of some of the bad songs you have to write. But at one point, writing something, you think, hey, this isn't bad. And at the same time, realizing whether it's really your band, that sound that you're looking for. And maybe that's not the right word for it, but you know what I mean?
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. I think it's a few different things, especially with us, because I think to some degrees, people have sort of described us as very eclectic, and like the songs are can be very different from one song to another, which shows that we're kind of reaching in a lot of different directions at once. But I know exactly what you mean when it's like we are looking, or there is a sound that's sort of central to my mind that I'm always going after. don't always get there for a variety of reasons. Sometimes the band doesn't really hear it that way.
But I guess you don't want every song to sound the same either.
No.
And I do think that some of that variety that we have in there is beneficial to us, and I think that our audience enjoys that. And we always say we want to take the audience on a journey even within an album.
Yeah.
But yeah, making sure that it's like the goal, obviously, at the end of the day, is for a song to come on and it to be instantly recognizable as what we do.
Yeah.
You know, which
that'd be good.
I'm not sure we're there yet, but
yeah. And you're always being pulled in multiple directions too, which is another thing, right? We're playing a lot of blues festivals, roots festivals, both in clubs and events all over the world, or Europe, and North America, and some of my favorite bands, I wonder how they would fare in front of some of the audiences that we're put in front of.
Right.
Like if you've got a real classic rock audience and you put on if Sarah McLachlan came out and you didn't know who she was, and she's amazing, but like how is that going to go down when they really want Zeppelin? So that's one of the things that sort of, and maybe that's a little bit of that cover band mentality sneaking in, where we're like, oh, we better have a couple rock and roll numbers, in the back pocket for when it really seems like a rock and roll crowd. Conversely, sometimes we'll be playing a lot of blues festivals and we don't really play that much traditional blues. We actually like that. We feel like that's like a sort of a feather in the cap when it comes to like, all right, here's something a little different that you maybe didn't hear today. So, yeah, I mean, all of these things are a consideration for sure.
Okay, so you said, let's write our own songs. At that point, do you have an idea of what you want to accomplish in a band?
We certainly didn't see where we are now. I think it was just to get some songs written to start, and to try to reach out and see what was possible. Like before we even recorded anything, before we added the horns, I was looking at these little competitions to kind of see how that would help us. So we did a couple of those that we won, which gave us access to a bit of recording time that we never used. And and
you didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah, and some festivals. One of the competitions was the Toronto Blues Society Talent Search. So because of that, we started a relationship with Southside Shuffle, which was the first festival that played us, and multiple other festivals that as part of that prize.
So, and at that point, how confident are you of your live show? Like you're trying to create your own songs. You've been playing in many bands for many years, so performing is not an issue. But as a band, do you feel like you're a strong entity as a live
I don't know.
It's hard to think about how we felt about it back then.
I'm sure we felt pretty nervous.
We were nervous. We were probably proud of, having accomplished a set's worth of tunes.
There's still lots of times today when we say, what are we doing here? Like,
I was going to say
we're way out of our depth here. Like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. This year coming up, we're playing Boss Pop. And that day is the Black Keys, Train, the Warren Haynes Band, Bonamassa, Orianthe is playing. So it's just these are really established artists. Sometimes we play this club in Portsmouth called Jimmy Jazz, and Schofield plays there,
and Morrison just did a gig
Herbie
there.
Hancock plays there, and we're just like, okay, well tonight it's Bywater Call,
And we'll fill the room, which is kind of crazy.
It goes over well, but yeah, I think I was
gonna say it probably wasn't a huge difference from our mindset now, where we're always kind of looking at our show and being like, it's good, sometimes it's great, but it could be better. And I'm sure we were looking at it that way too.
Yeah.
So do you mean
even
it
back
could be
then
better because of the way you play that particular night, or it could be better because you can arrange it better?
I think you should just, I don't know. I don't think you grow or improve or reach new milestones without constantly reevaluating what you're doing and making sure that we're I don't know.
George Harrison had that great quote, if we knew we were going to be the Beatles, we would have written better songs. I love that quote because it says so much about what, that they probably, they put out so many amazing timeless records, and they probably thought, yeah, that was a real 7 out of 10. We'll get them next time, and we're on the receiving end. We're like, oh my God, it's the greatest album ever made. But it's different depending on which way it's coming.
So obviously there wasn't this 5-year plan that said by this year we want to be here, or we want to be doing 100 gigs, whatever, right? So how did you proceed, and how did you get to 140 gigs and touring all over the world?
It was steps at a time. So I would say in the early couple of years we were doing Canadian festivals, and then our record producer of the first 2 records had a connection with a touring company in Europe. And that, just to backtrack a little bit there, I remember driving with our bassist Mike, and I said, I think there's a chance we might get to do a European tour. And he laughed. He's like, oh yeah, European tour, great. It's just in time for me to move into my mansion. It's like it was just so ridiculous at the time. Lo and behold, 6 months later, we were on our first European tour.
Well, and we that tour got confirmed that was going to happen before we even finished our first album. It was...
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So how does that happen? Because the reputation you have as a live band?
Well, basically what happened with that was we started working with Gypsy Soul Records for our first 2 albums. Like Dave said, the producer on there, Renan, had, with a band he was in formerly, had toured over there. So he let Manny, who runs Teenage Head Music in Europe, kind of brought us to his attention, and he came to Toronto and actually saw us showcase, and
one of the Toronto Blues
at the Toronto Blues Summit.
Yeah.
And he thought we would go over well, and was willing to
give it a try.
Yeah.
And that would later lead to us meeting one of his top bands, Robert John and the Wreck, and Meg and I would do a duo tour opening for them across Europe and the UK in 2023, early 2023.
Beginning of 2023, yeah.
And because I think of that relationship, and because Robert John and the Wreck were already on the Intrepid label, I think their scouts came across us through like the algorithm or something. It was like, oh, we like these guys
yeah,
too.
they wrote us.
And that started that relationship.
Wow.
So it snowballed kind of.
That was nice. It was really, really encouraging, I guess, to have Intrepid, who does quite well, for them to approach us and see if it was something we were interested in. And again, like, nobody in the States knew us, so they were taking on some risk there, and nobody in the States knew us, so we were taking on some risk there, and we were willing to do that together. And we're still building it. It takes a while. We've been doing Europe for 5 years. We're in our 3rd year touring in the States, and some areas, it catches on really quick, and some areas it takes a while.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? I'm always curious.
Gosh,
like some bands
I
who
wish
make it.
if I knew the answer, I feel like
I mean, I would say that the lost art, even in Toronto, but definitely like everywhere, the lost art of club curation needs to come back. And it was one of the best things about so many Toronto clubs. It was like, if you're playing there, that means something. It means that the powers that be said, this is great, and that other thing is not. You know what I mean? Whatever that other thing may be. And a lot of bands would be trying to get into some of these venues. Orbit Room, Joe Mama's when it existed. The Reservoir Lounge is like that.
Yeah, and people would come out just based on the venue's reputation.
That's right.
So,
Right.
So if you have a club that says, yeah, anybody can play here any night. Tonight it says whatever, Fleetwood Mac tribute, and tomorrow night it's karaoke, and then we're doing a comedy night. It's like, okay, so coming here is going to be very inconsistent for the audience. So they can't count on the venue. They have to start going by the performer. Every time we've gone to a club that has a curated band list, it seems to be doing really well. That the place that I mentioned with Herbie Hancock, I said that's Jimmy's Portsmouth curated playlist. So some theaters, soft theater theaters in the States we play. There's the Bush Home here in Erin that's doing that. 3030 was doing that when they just closed, but there's Hughes Rooms opening up and doing that. I think that's a thing. I think
Which
that
makes
should
sense.
be. I think that should be kept above above. It's like when you go to a restaurant and they've got every single thing ever on the menu. It's like 5 pages of and like 190 items.
The Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah. It's usually a bad. None of it's very good, right?
I wonder. So when Intrepid comes to you, like it's one thing to do a short tour in Europe, but when Intrepid comes to you and says we want to try to break you into the States, from that cover band, events band mentality. Of making money and playing around the city or whatever and not touring a lot, to taking on a tour which might not necessarily guarantee you having money at the very end of the tour. Was that when that opportunity came to you, was it, yes, we got to do this, or did you think, what does this all mean, and what kind of impact could this have on the band?
We wanted to play, and the band was on board for that.
Yeah.
And something we've been talking about a lot lately is like any new opportunity, almost any new opportunity is an opportunity we should at least look at and be like,
it's exciting.
Even if it's not money at the end of the day, if it's reaching a new audience, if it's helping us grow the band genuinely, then it's worth it. And
yeah, we're still very much in the get your name out there phase of musical politics or whatever that is. So we're certainly not in a position to be like, oh no, we're too busy for that, or we'll just stay
not
home,
necessarily too busy, but knowing that it's taking on something that's not easy to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you don't want to go do it.
I mean, luckily we had been doing the Europe stuff, which had prepared us, for doing this, trying to do the same thing in the States.
Is there a difference to you? Like I know a lot of people, especially European artists, who feel that they don't really need to go to the States, but it's too much work, too many people, and they can do way better in Europe.
I
don't know.
I guess there is some truth to that too, or at least it seems like it.
Yeah, it's hard because we've been doing it a bit longer. But we definitely are at a point in Europe now, that we don't play a gig to 10, 20, 50 people. Like that's every gig. It's pretty consistent for us now in Europe and is getting bigger every time we go back. It still feels like we're early days with that in the States.
Yeah,
like I said, there's some areas where it's getting really dependable. Like we can really depend on those areas, and then some areas where we're still starting to break through. I do think there's more of the maybe curated venue, like that idea in Europe. I feel like maybe there's more of that, or at least more willingness and trust on the part of music fans to be like, okay, even if I don't know this band, I know the booking agency, or I know the promoter, I know the venue, who are willing to go out and take a chance on new music that you don't see to the same extent in the States, and certainly don't see in Canada.
I think Europeans just like to be out and about. I mean, it's such it's such a stereotypical oversimplification, but it's like, I think I know Canadians, at least in my family, and I don't mean to throw them under the bus, but many Canadians I know are very satisfied to stay home and watch Netflix, and that's reflected in the audiences you're seeing at most clubs across the city, most live music venues, unless it's maybe a Friday or Saturday night, and especially if it's the Stones or the Eagles at the Scotiabank, that's going to sell out. But Europeans just seem to be up for going out and seeing a band at a club, even if they don't know it. They'll give it a shot, and then they'll decide on the merit. In
general, they love the arts a lot more and have more respect for it.
Yeah,
and whether it be painting or music or classical music or whatever.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So do you approach things differently when you play different places?
Like country speaking or club to club? I think we're still trying to get to know our audience, so we like to lean it. You're trying to be original, not even amongst original artists, there can be a lot of similarity, especially in the blues genre and in the sort of southern rock genre. You do get a lot of similar sounds. You kind of want to not, and I think you see this with some of the artists that have really broken out over the years, is it's very unique unto themselves. They are like Larkin Poe and are not is nothing like Tedeschi Trucks, even though they both feature female vocals and slide guitar, as we do, right? So I think everybody's trying to carve out their own little niche path within that. And so I think we'll throw in a few ballads and then a few hot rockin' songs and couple of covers, some jamming, just try to make it like this is the only place you're getting this particular experience.
And I think that's pretty consistent, like no matter where we are geographically. Sometimes the venue will inform what we do a little bit. So if it feels a bit more like
seated
crowd, if it feels like the room might be overwhelmed by some of the repertoire, then we'll make tweaks based on that. But I think the overall kind of experience that we try to portray is so weird how I said that. But I think that's fairly consistent, from one country to the next.
Okay, I have to ask, when you played at the Rivoli, you, I think, debuted a song where you had played it once before. And it was, believe it was an acoustic number or a mellow tune. Beautiful song, clusters or
clutter,
yeah.
Brand new.
And so you mentioned that, and all of a sudden everybody pulls out the camera and starts shooting. I don't know if you were aware of that, but I was certainly
I saw a lot of video footage of it afterwards.
What does that? I mean, obviously it's a compliment, but here it is. You're debuting a song. You're thinking maybe it's going to go on the next album, and then everybody's got their phone up.
Yeah.
And you just think, oh, okay, this is good publicity for the song, or do you think, oh, people, please?
I think it's fine where we are now.
I'm just thinking about like when I saw Chappelle at the Danforth when we're at the Comedy Cellar. You've got to case your phone now, right?
I know.
They don't want that.
I can understand.
I don't think we're at the point
with comedy. It's really hard because it's like once you've heard the joke, it's kind of over.
Yeah. I'm fine because I think it means that they're excited about it, which is fine. When it's something brand new, it is a little tough because it's like we don't even know if this is the finished product, but we might mess it up. I might not be fully off book yet or something, but I don't know. I think maybe it personalizes us. It makes it.
Yeah.
It makes it. It's an intimate experience where it's like, okay, we trust you guys enough to put this out there, and
at this level, and even at the level of bands that are doing way better than we are, you're constantly feeding your audience base, and they're very supportive and sort of sympathetic. So I don't think if they like the band, they're going to buy the album whether or not they heard a video of the song. You know what I mean? Regardless. Like it's all good news. So I think in that way we're totally okay with it.
Do you think you're at a point? You talked about the various types of music that you play, but do you think you're at the point where your fans just know that? So if you did anything different, it's totally fine. Do you know what I mean? Like, are you now known as a band who's very eclectic? And
I think they are pretty accepting of what we put out there because we've gotten, on that scale, it's like there's people love Holler, which is like a straight up blues rocker, and then people really love Let Me Be Wrong, which is
jazzy,
almost, and it's they get equal amounts of shout outs. I think it shows. So,
that's true.
Depends where you are. Let Me Be Wrong in particular in the Netherlands, but
my favorite is Colors.
Oh yeah.
What a stunning song.
Love that song. That one came together. That was one of those ones that did come together pretty easily, I think.
Yeah.
I think
it was the beginning to a certain degree, maybe not the beginning, but one of the first songs where I think I had an outline of the lyrics before we were super worried about what the band and chords we're gonna do with it. You know what I mean? Like it.
Maybe, yeah.
Whereas in the past it's always chords and then lyrics. This was lyrics first, and then we just played the chords, and it was just like, this is great. This is good. I'm happy with it. Yeah. Which is a whole different school of writing. Like when I just recently fallen into a huge Donovan Woods thing where I'm just listening to all his stuff, and he sounds like a guy who's just writing incredible lyrics all day, and then he fits some sweet guitar to it. You know, stuff like that. Bob Dylan probably. You know,
poets.
Not that we're comparing ourselves to those guys, just saying like that way of writing is really interesting.
Has the way of writing changed now that you're touring a lot more?
We have done more for the Shepherd album. We did in a way that we hadn't really before. We did a lot of workshopping on the road. That was more in 2023. That seemed more difficult to do in 2024 for some reason. But we did a lot of it where there's an idea we're working on, and we would use sound check time to try to move that tune a little bit forward with a goal of like, okay, in a week, that tune's going to make its debut strictly on sound check development. So which is a good way to use kind of when you're there for hours before a show. It's a good way to use your time, and we'll keep doing that, but it was just a little more difficult to get that going this year.
How long did it take for you to get used to the touring life? Because I can't imagine that being easy.
I don't think we are used to it.
I think I handle it better than anybody. Like I'm fine with it.
Yeah, you seem good. You seem happy.
I enjoy it. I have no problem hotel to hotel. I like that I don't have to wash dishes while we're away.
Interesting. Never thought of that.
I don't super hate being in the back of a van. You get tired and cranky. Everybody does, but
yeah,
I don't think that. I think I handle being on the road fairly well.
I really like routine in my life, and you can't have it on tour. So today we're driving 6 hours, and tomorrow we're driving 2 hours, and there's breakfast today, but it ends at 8 a.m., and the next day there's breakfast, but it ends at noon, and we have to be at the venue at 1, and then we can't get to the hotel before the gig. So every day is a whole new deck shuffle, and you're constantly living on somebody else's schedule, be it the tour manager who's just doing their job, they have to do it, or the plan for the venue, or how far away the one gig is from the next. So it's really hard to have any kind of similarity from day to day, which kind of makes you a little crazy, because you can't fall in any kind of rhythm with any of the things you would do, be it exercising or, for me, like writing, playing guitar. Yeah. It's like, oh, well, you might have an hour today, or you might have 10 hours tomorrow. It's all that stuff can kind of make you a little crazy. But I do really like it's the back and forth, like coming off the road in mid-December, whatever we did. I was like, oh, we get to be home for all this time. It's great. I love it. And now, around the end of January, I'm getting a little squirrely. I'm like, it'd be good to get back.
Yeah, well, we consciously decided not to go back on the road in February, which I'm glad we did, because we're making some progress creatively. But it's different. It's different being at home with no gigs for a couple months.
Different, good, different, bad.
Bit of both.
Yeah. And it's been a long time since we've had this much downtime. So
So would you recommend doing this again or not? Has it been a good experience?
I like it.
Yeah.
The break?
Yeah.
Like I said, it's especially January, Canadian winter January it's a little like you start to go like, what's it called? Like seasonal affected disorder kicks in a little bit.
And it's easy to just not leave the house some days. That's not good.
Yeah, it's cold. It gets dark at 5 p.m. or whatever, and we're not doing much. So
we'll have to see where things lie. I mean, there's opportunities in January and February that if they were presented to us, we would take them in a second. Like there's other music cruises that happen. A lot of them out of Florida in January and February. Heck yeah.
Okay, so the music cruise you went on, Joe Bonamassa' music cruise. Tell me how that happened and what that experience was like.
So I think the initial hookup, or whatever you want to call it, kind of goes back to Dave talking about our friends, the band Robert John the Wreck out of California, because they had done a few of those already. We're on the same European label as them, or European booking agency as them, and the same US booking agency as them. And they're now on Bonamassa's record label. And I think his camp became aware of us because of all of those connections. And, there's a couple people in the Joe Bonamassa family that had also just randomly discovered our music on Spotify who really, really liked it. So all of that together, we got the offer to do Greece, which was the Mediterranean tour, which is amazing. And just a very cool experience. We had never been on a cruise ship before. I don't know if I would enjoy a normal cruise experience.
No.
But
after being spoiled
forever, I don't know. But like this was 5 days, so it's very manageable. You're surrounded by music and awesome musicians all the time, and people who are there to enjoy the music and want to talk to you about it. And for me, it was after that, following that cruise was one of the first times I really felt like we were actually part of a music community, because following that we ran into a lot of the artists who were on the ship. We ran into them in other areas of touring, and there's a bond there because of it.
Yeah.
And that felt really good, because it can feel pretty lonely.
Yeah.
And now we run into fans who are on the cruise ship all the time, all over the world, which is pretty cool.
We're headed to our next one in
March.
We're back on the Bonamassa cruise.
nice.
Yeah, out of Miami.
And it's just as usual, it's like a who's who heavyweight list of like
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy.
blues legends: Eric Gales, Larkin Poe, Samantha Fish, Joe will be there, obviously, Eddie Ninevolt, all these friends of ours.
Jimmy
Vivino, who we got to hang out with a bit last time. It's great. Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Tell me about, I know we talked about the rough side of being on tour, but tell me some of the other highlights you've experienced.
Well, I mean, just getting to see different cities is cool. Now,
Yeah.
sometimes you don't get to see the city
Right.
at all, but you do get to experience the people always, which is awesome. But then having moments where you have a little extra time in a city, it's funny, it doesn't take much. If you have one day off in a city, you feel like you know that city just because you had that little bit of extra time. So like most cities that we've ended up having a day off, we feel very affectionate towards and are like, excited to go back. So being able to see Europe and see places in the States, while playing there is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean, the people who follow us, we have some pretty amazing fans, which is cool. It's amazing that people are so into what we're doing that they follow us. We have some great people who follow us all over the world, which is, I mean, that's crazy. It's awesome.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Would you have imagined what you're going through at this point? Like any of this?
No, definitely not. I always thought we would do that Central gig.
Yeah.
And a few more gigs around town, and that would probably be about the end of it.
Yeah.
So
having experienced this and having toured many parts of the world, do you have goals? Like, looking
yeah,
forward?
I don't know if they're so tangible, because that can be kind of, I think one of the things we're learning is to really just try to enjoy it. Like, do your best to try to take it as far as you can, but also enjoy it for what it is, because you can't get caught up in this sort of ladder climbing, which is somewhat out of our hands to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. Like, Meg and I will talk a little bit every day about Spotify numbers, and it's like, there's nothing we can do about this. Like, we just keep releasing music, and hopefully it's embraced by enough people that it's the algorithm or whatever does it spreads it further than we can ourselves, but there's nothing you can do about it. So in terms of goals, if we can just keep going and keep being happy doing it, I think that's great. Like, I've always said I'd love to play Massey Hall one day, but I don't want to look back and be like, well, I never got there, so what a letdown.
But it's amazing to me, and I said this when I first met you was just the fact that how well you guys have done. And I don't know if you see that or, totally appreciate it because you're in the middle of it. But from an outsider's point of view, it's pretty impressive what you've accomplished.
Yeah,
in the
it's definitely easy to get lost in it, to be like, I think it doesn't take much to feel like you're on a plateau whereas in reality we're probably not. There's still gains made all the time that we're not aware of, or more people seeing us all the time that we're not quite aware of. It's like Dave said, on one hand, trying to see the forest for the trees, and but I don't think I did that right. But also I think it's important that we try to continue to grow, because we don't want this project, this experiment, to start feeling like the cover band did. We don't ever want to get there with this. So it's important that we're always creating new stuff and creating stuff that we're proud of and feels like growth. And, hopefully seeing gigs on the books that feel like growth. Yeah. Yeah.
I have to ask, how difficult is it to keep a 7-piece band happy?
I think we've got the right people.
The fact that the only seat at this point that has changed is keys.
Yeah. And
I think with how hard we work and how much time we spend on the road and what it takes to, make records and blah, blah, blah. What we've been through, I think it says a lot that everybody's still in the band. And of course it's not easy, and everybody has their own personality, and there's fights, but it always comes back. And
I think they're as excited as maybe as your previous question when you said, from the outside it looks like it's going really good. I think we feel that too, and I think they feel like that. It's like, comparatively speaking, like it's not easy to play as much as we do, or have some of the opportunities that we've been lucky enough to get. So, maybe that's inspiring them to stay in the band.
And I mean, there's some perspective there where like a lot of the guys have played with other bands that have done some touring, and to see with our collective, they weren't necessarily touring music that they had written, but to be touring music that they are very much part of, and see the growth that we've had over the last few years. Yeah.
Like, are there things that you think, well, we need to hopefully do this by 5 years from now?
That would be a very good and wise thing to do, but it's just, it all feels so, it really feels that kind of sort of concrete thing. It just feels so unattainable, because there really is no avenue. So for anybody who's like looking at the band and being like, oh, they're doing well, it really is just like a dog with a blindfold on, just running around constantly being like, do you like this? How about this? We'll go here. And then we made this song. You don't like that one? No problem. Here's a different one. Like, that's happening constantly, because there's no manager. Nobody tells us like, oh, it'd be really good is if you should do a collaboration with this person, or you should put out this kind of song, or make a Christmas record, or whatever the thing is. We have no idea. We would probably end up doing all those things, but completely accidentally. So like I said, if we were to hang like these sort of, rigid, like, let's try to do this, let's have, this in 2 years or something like that, there's absolutely no way of getting there. There's no path. Like, it's just, I think that's one of the hardest things. It's just having no idea. You just,
all the stuff you have to figure out on your own.
Yeah.
Which is,
Spotify doesn't say like, oh, that song wasn't any good, do more like this other song. You just look at the numbers and go, oh, okay.
It'd be nice, to have a couple nominations here and there, and in
the
writing. Well, I was gonna say more in like the writing category, like a Juno or a on Grammy. But I also
Hey, Sue Foley just got a Grammy nomination.
That's awesome. It's so cool.
Canadian gal, Sue Foley.
But at the same time, there's tons of politics and bullshit that goes into that stuff too. So it's like, I certainly wouldn't want to hang my hat on that kind of stuff. It'd be like, we haven't accomplished something if we don't get those kind. But we've also had some cool recognition, which is great.
Yeah, for sure. And well deserved. I have to tell you that I don't ask every one of my guests who come on the show about that, but I have asked many if they ever had a 5-year plan or any kind of plan. And I really can't think of anybody who said, yes, I did.
Right.
So I
It's
just,
such
but
a
I'm
hard
hoping that
thing
one
to,
day
like,
somebody will tell me.
Yeah.
We should
Well,
do
we
one.
should
Let's
start
do
working
one.
on
We're gonna do
it.
it now.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Okay, so you mentioned the manager. Is that something you want, or you hope you don't have? Like,
If they knew what
It
they
would have
were
to be the
doing,
right. It would have to be the right person. We
We'd
would be
love it.
very open to if it's the right person, because any building a proper team is just part of growth. With this stuff, but yeah, we just have to know it. There's no way of knowing for sure, but
If it was
like the
anybody
right-
with a
the right
proven
person.
track record who's like,
Yeah.
I managed this band and they're doing good, I'd be like,
Yeah.
okay, let's talk.
We'd
If it was somebody who was like, I'd like to try managing your band, but I've never done it before, uh-oh.
But yeah, we'd certainly welcome guidance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be nice.
but it does feel like you make it sound like it feels like you really are kind of trying to figure it all out.
100%.
Right, we are.
100%.
But for somebody who maybe hasn't figured it all out, it just seems like you've done very well.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. And that is the one thing that I think does kind of keep us aware, is that we do get that a lot. A lot of people have said, hey, you guys are doing really great, or geez, you guys played a lot of shows last year. I think Ian said it last night.
Oh, yeah. You find out that people... Yeah,
it's nice. It's like,
you get
you
surprised
noticed.
about the people who are kind of following your progress,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool too. Yeah.
I think
But it's
we're-
also nice to see, like I said, the last album was wonderful. I think the fact that there were some really strong songs. And I think when all is said and done, I mean, you got to be a great live band. You got to have great singing. You got to have great musicians. But it's the song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
We
I
agree
just
with
think the
that,
song
yeah.
is the one that keeps things going ahead, moving ahead, getting bigger. And if you could be the greatest player, but if you don't have a good song, it's just...
I agree with that 100%.
And then if you can't get the good song in front of the right
right.
Yeah.
ears, sometimes, there's so many elements to it. But at the end of the day, it starts with the music, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think you guys have done that with the last album. So
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
Yeah.
thank you so much for doing this. I really,
Thanks for
I
having
saw
us.
you
That
guys,
was
saw
fun.
you in December. I just thought, wow, I need to talk to them. And
Yeah.
I was
those
just
are
so
super
intrigued
fun
because
shows,
of where you guys, how busy you were last year, maybe what that gig meant to you, and you got another year coming up. So
Yeah.
tell me about what's happening this year.
So the first chunk of touring is basically getting us down to Miami to do the Joe Bonamassa Keeping the Blues Alive. Revisiting some spots we've been to, which is great, and some new spots. So just down the Eastern Corridor and back.
Yeah.
And then
Very first show is in North Bay.
that's right. The
Apple
first show is
Center.
in North Bay.
Yeah, it's the wrong way,
So
but
just go a little bit
that's
north,
okay.
and then we'll come back down.
Does that ever bother you? Like, I always wonder about bands who...
It seems unavoidable.
Yeah,
Right.
we learned that a tour map is not the same as a map. It has nothing.
Yeah.
Two things have nothing to
Very
do with
different.
each other.
Yeah, and then there's some other really cool stuff planned for the States. We've got some Canadian festivals that are gonna happen that I don't think have been announced yet, but always excited. And one of our main goals is to do more playing in Canada, so we're working hard on that.
Yeah,
And then we have 2 tours that are going to happen in Europe this year. So we're doing a little summer tour for the first time ever and taking advantage of some of the festivals that are going on. That first one ends, like Dave said, with this big Boss Pop festival in the Netherlands. So we're really excited about that one.
yeah.
And then another one hitting up Spain and the UK.
Yeah.
North Germany and Spain.
Nearby
and then
countries,
UK.
Spain and the UK.
Yeah.
Together at last.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you guys doing this.
Yeah.
It was really fun.
Thanks for having us. It's great.
Thank you.